So hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to this webinar, which is being facilitated very kindly by Deloitte. So for those of you who maybe attended the last one, we had a Marketing 101 session. This is Marketing 102. And Luke from Deloitte, who's also here co-hosting with me today, is going to be taking you through this very useful material. So just a few house rules before we kick off. Just a note to everybody, if you could set your chat box function to all panelists and attendees, then if you have any questions or comments, that just means that everybody can see them. As we go through, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to pop them in the chat box. I and also my colleague Hayley, who all of you have met before, will be keeping tabs on that and passing those over to Luke. If you want them to be answered as we go, we can do that. Otherwise, we'll have a decent chunk of time at the end for a Q&A for any of those specific questions. And if you've got anything that can't be answered in the session today, Luke has very kindly said that he'll be happy to follow up afterwards to the extent that they are able to help. So just very, very quick introduction to me. If you don't know me, my name's Caitlin. I'm the project lead for the Mental Health Sustainability Programme here at the Association of Mental Health Providers. And I'm going to pass over to Luke, who can give an introduction to himself. Luke, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Caitlin. And also thank you, all of you, for joining. So yes, I'm Luke Galvin, a digital marketing consultant here at Deloitte, here to run our Digital Marketing 102 training. I actually joined the 101 training my colleague Georgie ran so well, I think about a month ago, I think it was, Caitlin. So yeah, I'm here just to build on that foundational knowledge, but I get the feeling that many of you will be comfortable with some of the concepts that we talk through here, but maybe won't know all the layers of insight and detail behind them. Before joining Deloitte, I was working marketing for kind of FTSE 100 companies for 5 years, and also kind of started off in the third sector. So I'd like to think that I understand some of the nuances and maybe pain points, and also unique kind of pieces that you will need to be considering when you are kind of in that sector. So I think without further ado, let's kick off and start going through the content. We've got about 10 to 15 slides. We should have plenty of time left for Q&A, but as noted, please do put some questions in the chat and we can kind of go through those as and when they come in. Excellent. Sorry, I'm just going to minimize all our speakers because I can't see the content that well. Great. So let's kick off. So we want to do marketing. We want to kind of kick off, find some fundraisers, get our share of voice out there into the market. But before we do anything, we need to think about how to create our digital marketing campaign. And we need to have a really structured approach. You know, if we just put our finger in the air, think about things that might work and then kind of execute from that, it's not going to yield really good strategic results. So our successful marketing campaign has to start with a really clear purpose and a relevant organizational need. You know, we need to understand who we're targeting, what our message is going to be, and what the purpose or output is going to be. And a lot of the times in digital marketing, it might be, you know, to get people to drive traffic to websites, to sign up to newsletters, and all those other kind of wider brand pieces that underpin your strategy and what you're doing. So the need will probably drive your overall strategy and your chosen tactics. And it's something you'll use as a guidepost and refer back to throughout your campaign development and execution. I'm sure all are aware, but when you are kind of first putting a campaign out there into the market, that'll be the first iteration, and dependent on your results, you'll assess the state of your campaign, figure out where we can refine, and always redeploy as well. So once a campaign ends, you probably measure your successes against your original plan and have some really clear objectives using a key set of metrics, or KPIs if you want to call them out. So having a really structured approach to tracking and also measuring your campaigns is essential. For instance, on email, knowing how many people we're sending emails to, what our open rate, the rate of people opening an email is, and also the amount of people that are clicking on all the content, are really good ways of us gauging if content's informative, if the layout works, and if we need to change anything for perhaps the next campaign or any penultimate executions. So I guess from, as we can see on the right-hand side of the table, it makes sense just to look at things in a really structured way. So first of all, let's assess the current state of your organization, figure out what it is we're trying to achieve with this marketing activity. Second, set objectives. Are we running, I don't know, an online billboard or display campaign? What do we want to achieve from that? Are we sending a newsletter? All these different kind of marketing tools will have slightly different outcomes. So if we're really clear about what the objectives are, we can pick the best channels to go forwards with. Third, we need to build a strategy. I think it goes without saying, but a lot of people are busy during working hours. So if we're talking to people that are working age and they're our key demographic, we need to make sure that we're talking to them at times that are suitable for them, using marketing tools and tactics that they're likely to interact with. We need to outline our tactics, understand what we are going to do and when we're going to do it. And then obviously after that, once we've got an idea of our strategy, our tactics and our plan, we need to execute it, put that into motion, push our digital marketing assets live. And after all of that, we need to continuously monitor and report on our campaigns. I think a really interesting point to note is, even tools like MailChimp and other email platforms now have continual live monitoring and reporting metrics for all your campaigns included. I'm sure there's lots of people using lots of different kind of email platforms or customer relationship management platforms, data platforms, but a lot of them will actually have their own monitoring and reporting in there, which kind of hopefully will lift some of that pain of people needing to record everything in Excel spreadsheets and update them thoroughly. So always good to check out and see if we've got any of that reporting metrics set up. Great. So I think building our campaign. So everyone's idea of what they need to achieve is going to be slightly different here. I'm aware that I'm speaking to a lot of different organizations, all of different kind of sizes, and maybe quite a few different strategic focuses across the same space and slightly different desirable outcomes, which is completely fine. But when we are building those digital marketing campaigns, having a really clear vision, I think, as we've spoken about, and understanding those objectives is going to underpin what we're doing. Is the objective to grow awareness of our organization? Is it to get more people into a newsletter and hopefully re-engage them? Is it to speak to people that have already been fundraisers and then kind of re-engage them with the good work and value that the organization is creating and hopefully re-engage that fundraising loop? Is it to speak to businesses rather than your kind of consumer, if we'll call them that, rather than just people, and try and speak to them and see if they've got a CSR offering that we want to speak to? So I think the first step on this, as always, is definitely assess your current state of your organization. Where are we now? And from that, into our objectives, where do we want to be? Where do we want to be doesn't need to be where do we want to be tomorrow. It can be an aspirational goal. Where do we want to be in 3, 6, 9 months, a year? And we can use our marketing as a buffer to build up to those wider long-term goals. So just to tie back into purpose. So the purpose of us setting all this vision and objectives is to make sure that we can gather all the kind of intelligence we need to make really informed decisions about our marketing strategy, understanding, who are, I don't like to say the word customers or consumers, but for lack of a better word, who our target audience are. Other things we really need to do to understand our current state is review the performance. What's the engagement of reach for, I don't know, our social media posts, our display advertising, everything that a user can see, or a fundraiser, or anyone that's interacting with your brand. Everything is branding now. So, if that's a Twitter page, a web page, people they speak to, it could be a radio advert, anything and every touch point that a consumer sees, or fundraiser, apologies, is branding. So we need to really understand how our digital marketing touch points map out, and really kind of drill down into researching and understanding those statistics that might help anchor your goals. If we've seen that other organizations are seeing an uplift of of membership or fundraising. Great. Why is that? Is that something that we need to understand? And is that something that we can perhaps put into play in our own activities? A lot of really good marketing is, I'll use the word inspired by others. Marketing is such a big practice that there's a big chance someone else will have done it first. So there's always a good chance that you can take inspiration from similar organizations and activities around you, and even brands that have nothing to do with what you're doing, because there are always interesting usages of things like tone of voice that make such a big difference here. Another really key piece that underpins this is aggregating all our reporting from previous performance. Have we sent email campaigns before? How much web traffic do we usually get? Because if we can benchmark all of those kind of engagement metrics, understanding how many people on average open our emails, like our social media posts, add reviews or feedback or user-generated sentiment to wherever possible, and any kind of digital performance, having those benchmarks lets us understand what the lay of the land is now. And also, if we overshoot them, then we know that something's going really well. If we usually get a 20% open rate on an email and a 2% click-through rate, and then we change and kind of refine the content on it, and it's getting much better metrics than that, then we can deduce after the campaign that something's worked and take some learning from that and use A/B testing to figure out what those kind of key differentiators are. So to determine how marketing can kind of help fulfill those organizational needs that we've spoken about, we've probably got some questions that you'd want to ask yourself before we set out on this. So are you trying to simply expand your reach, be that in terms of the reach of your brand, in terms of the reach of your social media posts? Do you need to do something that's more paid activity, like paid social media, to bump your posts out to a wider amount of people? Or are you trying to just increase your brand's visibility? Do you want to have kind of digital display adverts across the web? Do you want to do kind of online partnerships and tie-ins with other brands to increase your visibility and foothold that way? Or are you trying to reach new potential fundraisers or service users? So new business, if you will, not people that are already utilizing and serving your brand as it stands. Or, and this one's more of a re-engagement piece, are you trying to re-engage former fundraisers, businesses that you've worked with, or people that you've already had some kind of contact with? Because all the kind of channels and tactics that underpin each of those kind of outcomes are going to be slightly different, and the nature of how you talk to those people is going to be different too. So as an absolute baseline, all objectives should absolutely set a really clear direction and answer of where you want to go. Be really inspiring as well. Simply just to continue performing as you are today won't see the uplift that where you want to be over time. And absolutely be smart. And by smart, I'm sure many of you have heard this before, but smart objectives are what all of our objectives should aspire to be. Because when we communicate them across the organization, everyone's really clear that they are specific to one certain thing. They're measurable. So everyone across the reporting lines really clear on what the desired outcomes are. They're achievable. Whilst it's nice to be inspired and set long-term objectives, they do need to be achievable as well, relevant to the activity you're doing and the kind of things that your organization does, and also time-bound, so that we can say, okay, in 1 year's time, we want to uplift our amount of kind of reach, visibility on social media posts by 1 year. How do we do that? And then we work back from that. So I think that's a really nice, not logical way at looking at building a campaign, underpinning it with those visions and objectives. Excellent. So once we've done with our vision, we've figured out where we stand with that and our objectives. We need to go into actual strategy and tactics, and this is getting closer to our execution. And while it's tempting to leap forward and try and just execute some marketing, unless it's done really strategically, it might not have the impact that we intend it to, or you know, it in a longer term perspective, it may just not give you the performance that you want. And as we all know, marketing sometimes needs to be underpinned with budget, not always. So if we are spending budget, it's always great to have a really good strategy sitting behind it, so that we know any of that cost isn't going to be sunk and is hopefully going to give us some really nice KPI figures, such as a return on investment afterwards, that we can report across the organization. So let's start off with building our strategy. What routes can we take to kind of get there and build that out? So the first thing that always to do is build a really high level overview of your plan to achieve your stated objectives, and figure out what success looks like and what the key results are. One thing I would always do is lay down all of the marketing channels that I intended to use in a plan, and then have them either week by week or month by month, and then just really clearly in perhaps Excel, just fill in those blocks. And so we can be really, really clear when activity is expected to land, so that, you know, we're all accountable for that. And we can also report and share any kind of insights across the team. Really important strategic goals that I think we've spoken about already, but we'll continue to touch on, because they underpin everything we're talking about. Who are we trying to reach? You know, can we gather insights on your members, your fundraisers? Are they a certain demographic? Do they live in a certain location? And do they have certain interests? For instance, you know, are they all 18 to 30? Do they all live in the northwest of England? And do they all have a shared interest? And that interest could be that they, I don't know, are all keen fans for sport, or they all like to kind of congregate in the same kind of online spaces, be that blogs, certain social media sites, and any other kind of commonalities we can draw out. And then from that, we can identify our target audience profiles. And this will vary a lot dependent on your own circumstances and your own organization. But if we can draw out from the data, you know, who we're talking to in terms of their demographic, things they might be interested in, places they might be in, both online and physically, that can really help to underpin a great marketing strategy. And moving from the who, we also need to address the what. What are the reasons to believe? So how are you positioned? How do you compare to, I don't really like to use the word competitors in this space, because there are no competitors in the third sector, but how does your value offering compare to your peers? What is it that makes you different, and how can you differentiate? And understanding that value proposition and being able to relay it back to you know your audience, be they fundraisers or businesses, is going to be really important to getting that cut through and making sure your message lands as it was intended. And then from that, just what is your value proposition and offering? Is it that you know, what is it that your kind of charity or kind of social enterprise does that is different to others? You know, how do we help people? Can we illustrate that? Can we make some really good content around that? And can we make that clear to the audience? Because I think by having that delineation and showing people what you do, especially when you're an organization underpinned by purpose, I think that's a really important and powerful way to kind of build out your marketing across all your channels. And the where and when. So where and when can you reach your target audience? So it's always good to identify media behaviors and channels that are most utilized by your audience. I know we all know, with the proliferation of work from home, a lot of people are online more of the time, which gives us loads of really good, actually more opportunities to engage with them digitally. And also, I guess further to that, what timing is most appropriate for your audience? Is the campaign seasonal? Are you running up to a fundraiser towards Christmas? Or is it something else entirely? Are you just running business as usual communications? Are you sending a newsletter that you want to land every week? It's also really important to kind of understand that every different kind of channel you run will have different usage statistics. People might be more engaged on emails on a Monday morning, as it's the start of the week and they'll probably pay more attention to them. Whereas other people might be more likely to interact with online advertising after work, because they've got time outside of the workplace to actually interact with things that they find interesting across the internet. So once we've built our strategy, we've understood who we're trying to reach, we can kind of outline our value proposition and our our positioning as a kind of organization, and also we need to just figure out how we can reach our audience. Then we kind of outline our tactics, and we need to have a really specific, detailed approach to achieving your marketing goals. We need to know which kind of key levers you'll use to reach your target audience, and that will lead us to understand how we can execute our marketing strategy. So select your channel mix. What are the best channels to focus on? This needs to be tied in with your objectives and your own performance targets. If you're looking to raise fundraising, then it's probably best to choose a wide array of channels and try to figure out what works best for your business in terms of contacting people and getting those key KPIs to uplift. If you're solely focused on just getting more people driven to your website, you might just choose to do something that's digital display advertising or emails. And if you just want people to sign up and find out more about what you've been doing, it might just be to get more people to sign up to your newsletter. We need to make sure to define a communication strategy. We need to know what kind of content resonates with your audience. I think we know that in the third sector, there's really good cut through by talking to people, telling them what's in it for them. If you've raised a few £1,000s fundraising the last few months, and that's led to certain outcomes or helped a certain amount of people, absolutely, let's get some contextual data points in there. Let's talk about the good things that our organizations are doing and how they're helping the people that our organization underpins. I think a lot of brands that love to tell human stories, but if we can do that, keep them emotive, but absolutely try and add in some extra points saying we've raised X amount of fundraising this year, helping this many people. Oh, and here's a call to action button under it that you may want to click on if you want to help us continue on that journey. All of those are really, really powerful tools that I've seen done really well by lots of organizations, which I will get onto further in this call, so I don't give anything away. Differentiation strategy we've spoken about. So what is your value kind of proposition, but also how's your messaging and content going to change per channel? People on Twitter will obviously be used to short, snappy, quick, informative updates, whereas if you're sending a newsletter and it only contains 140 characters like Twitter, that your audience might feel a little bit peeved and might be left wanting a little bit more. So it's about understanding which of those key marketing channels you're using, be that your social, your email, your display, your search, how you're using them, and then how your messaging and content will change between those channels. And also understanding that everything is branding now. You need to have that really consistent tone of voice across all your channels, as that's what consumers have come to expect. And we are all kind of in that space. We can all reflect on what it's like to see one advert on one page and then go to a web page and the look and feel or the messaging is completely different, and it's always quite confusing as a consumer. And then finally, defining communication strategy. We need to just define our positioning. What's the key messaging you want to convey? What's the one thing that you want them to take away? I'd always say, from a copy perspective, let's write that one thing that we want our audience to take away. Write it down, try and phrase that the best we can, and then build our messaging out around that really important kind of value proposition and service. So in our last Marketing 101 piece, we kind of spoke about the different parts of the marketing funnel. So at the very top, we have acquisition, getting our leads, whatever they may be, into the top of the funnel using things like search. I think anecdotally about 90% of all kind of people that are going into any sales funnel will start on search, and Google is actually the front page in terms of sales of the internet, alongside things like Bing. We've got display and social media as well, all which are kind of top funnel. Moving further down our sales funnel, we've got kind of our conversion, which, direct sales, email, also a bit of social media. And then further to that, whilst it's always good to find leads, to convert them, we need to always be sure to kind of keep people retained make sure they're loyal, update them, speak about what you're doing, use your CRM and email platforms to send newsletters, tell them about the things your organization's achieved recently and how they can help you achieve in future. And by keeping people, kind of rewarding them, not in a traditional sense, not so much, but that doesn't matter. What we're rewarding people with is content, messaging, and understanding of the purpose and impact that your organization might be making, because by keeping them as part of that narrative, they'll want to re-engage with your organization and hopefully get you those kind of KPI uplifters and outcomes that you're looking for. Excellent. So we've done our strategy. We've worked through our tactics, and we're finally getting to the part of the campaign where we can implement and measure. Plenty has gone into this, but especially if we're using budget, we need to go through all of those steps just to make sure that we're not misallocating budget, and that what we're going to do is going to hit the right demographic of users or people or businesses at the right time, using the right marketing message and the right marketing channel. So there's a lot to consider, but when we've got to this, we also just there's a few watch outs that we need to put in whilst we implement our marketing. So executing our plan, who and what actions are needed to support delivery? Who do they sit with? Is this one person? Do we have a team of people? Do we have an agency? Are we doing it all on our own? All of those things will depend on the size of your organization, things like budgets and all those other kind of takeaways that are specific to you. But what we need to do is outline the activities, the people and capabilities needed to implement each of your tactics and deliver against your goals and objectives. You know, do we need someone that's a marketing specialist? Do we need to pull in people that can write content? All understanding which parts of the team are going to be free to help us drive this is really, really key. And the capabilities that they'll need to have. You know, will we need someone to rebuild web pages for certain campaigns, or perhaps to improve our search engine optimization? Moving kind of further down into this, assets. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, everything is branding now. Absolutely everything you see. If you, for instance, there's a delivery van outside, that's branding. Their website is branding. An email I get from them is branding. So, you know, DHL have their branding everywhere, and everything you see will tie back into your perception of that brand. So in terms of assets, all the assets will need to kind of match up your tone of voice that we've spoken about. So we've got that really nice consistency across all channels. It's always preferable to already have the creative assets ready before we kind of kick off on any marketing campaigns, especially if they're personalized. And that's usually because we can send them past all the key stakeholders, make sure we're agreed on the messaging, and also just check that everything is present and accounted for. Any call to actions are in there, and that, you know, we're really happy with the campaign assets that we're going to be pushing live in the implementation. So moving into this, so people, we need to decide who to support delivery of creative development, media planning, and campaign measurement. You know, this isn't a one-time thing. Marketing is an iterative process. So as soon as we send one campaign, it will go straight, we'll give it some time, and then we'll have to understand, you know, our reporting. Did the creative work? Do we need to change anything? Did we send the email at the right time? All of this will become a continual feedback loop. But it's only by continuing to execute the marketing we can get a good feel for what is and what isn't working. Processes. So what decision points need to be set to kind of accommodate delivery? Do we need, you know, the right stakeholders to approve our creative? Who's going to feedback on our reporting insights? Do we have a program that's going to do that? If we're sending an email, does the email platform have reporting ability, or are we going to have to kind of collate all of the insights ourselves and kind of lay them out to pick apart some really interesting strategy and insight off the back of it? And tools and technology, what kind of documents, platforms or software might be necessary to support implementations? So I think, as I said earlier, my best practice when I was running marketing for a few years would always be to have my marketing plan in something maybe like an Excel or a collaborative tool which everyone could see, with all of our key channels listed on the left hand side, one after the other, and then a timeline to the right hand side, so we could be really clear on our expectations of when an activity was going to be sent, who it was going to be sent to, and on what day it was going to be sent as well. And I don't know about you, but I often like to use a RAG status, red, amber, green, to kind of clarify on those kind of documents if something, hasn't gone, is about to go, or has been sent out, just so that anyone that picks up the document gets a really clear understanding of what marketing implementation looks like, and can kind of figure out where we're at without me even needing to kind of pick up the phone and speak to them. And then monitoring and reporting, did we accomplish our goal? Have we got those extra 10% email signups that we look to accomplish by sending out that campaign? And what can we learn and help us improve next time? Digital marketing is moving at an insanely quick rate. I'm sure loads of you will have anecdotal views on this, but I've got an app and it's from Nike, and it only ever buzzes me about notifications when I'm on a run. And I don't know how it knows, but obviously there's something in my phone that's moving around to tell it when I am going for a run. So I'm sure 5 years ago that was impossible, but digital marketing is moving so quickly. So all of the tools and tactics that we use are valid today, but in 6 months' time, they might need to be sharpened and changed. So, what we need to determine our plan and track and measure success against our key objectives. And just to run through this, what are our key performance indicators? Is it how many people are opening an email asset? Is it how many people are reacting to us or following us on social media accounts? Perhaps they are interacting with a poll that we've got on our Instagram. Is it something that's more revenue driven, such as fundraising or corporate sponsorship? How are we planning to track and measure these? Are we just seeing how many visits we're getting to the website? Can we do something that's something like URL tagging, such as Google Analytics tagging? So every link we have on our emails and our infrastructure have reporting underlaid. Can we kind of send out surveys to the people that are kind of responding to our marketing, or is that part of the marketing outcome? And also, how often are we going to report on the frequency of our marketing? Anecdotally, I think it could be overkill reporting every day, but I do think that having a semi-frequent reporting line and check in on marketing effectiveness is always really handy, because if we're only looking at something once every 3 months and there's some really good insight to kind of gauge from it, then you will have missed quite a lot of opportunity over that time. So personally, it depends on your own kind of set of circumstances, but always I would always signpost to check your marketing kind of data as it comes back, reporting every couple of weeks or every month at the latest as you can. What processes are in place for monitoring and optimization? So, how do we monitor our results? How can we optimize our performance? Do we need to change a layout of an email? Do we need to add more content? Do we need to add more imagery? How do we keep and engage that consumer focus? People see thousands upon thousands of adverts every single day, and in many cases, and I'm sure we'll all have kind of views on this, you can go blind to that. So how do we cut through? How do we make sure our message is the one that they take on board in the time that we've got to capture their attention? And then also, how can we link our marketing activities to attribute ROI? So we sent an email on Tuesday, and on Thursday we got loads of really good commercial results. How can we map that together? Can we tag those emails? Can we add a specific phone number on there for perhaps that people can call, so we can tie up the dots? There aren't always, unfortunately, not everything is always trackable in marketing. So sometimes there will be a bit of estimation, but if we can see a consistent pattern of sending marketing activity out and getting really good outcomes in terms of our KPIs, be that our ROI, we can tend to kind of join the dots together. And also, what kind of key insights can you gather to capitalize on any successes? Can we use, I know this is probably more of a retail-based example, but people can use things like lookalike targeting. to find, people that best resemble your converting members, so they can use data profiles to target people across the internet on display, social media, and target people that are just like them. So definitely something that we see more and more in retail. But if we can kind of figure out what our audiences look like, I don't see why there's not a way that we can't use that to help our decisioning moving forward when we're looking to kind of widen out those digital marketing campaigns. Excellent. So we've got through it. We've set up a nice strategic campaign. We've understood, our objectives, its scope, the messaging we're going to use, the vision, and we've implemented it, and we're starting to get some reporting, which is great. But we're at a stage where we need to start tracking and measuring our marketing effectiveness and ROI. So the first point to this, and one that you will have already set up, is setting those really clear objectives. So you can't just measure your performance if you don't have benchmarks and specific metrics to guide you in your planning decisions. If you get a 10% open rate on an email, but you don't compare it to any data that you've had before, then I think that's you don't know if that's meaningful or meaningless, because you don't have a benchmark to look at before. If you haven't done activity before, there are actually quite a lot of benchmarks for the third sector freely available if you search for them on Google, or perhaps I'll have a look and see if we can share something after this session. But there are lots of marketing benchmarks available online across the internet. When you are conducting activity for the first time, you can have an objective in there, but you can also kind of figure out if what you're doing is working really well, or if perhaps it needs tightening up or changing or optimizing slightly. So number 2, outlining our measurement activity. So how are you going to track that performance across all those different digital marketing channels and attribute it to your marketing campaign? If we're putting posts on social media, do we have the same kind of measurement as we would on an email? I think the answer probably, to me, would probably be that they need to be understood differently, as social media is usually more of a brand driver, whereas email kind of interacts a bit further down our sales funnel. It's more of a kind of acquisition-based activity. We need to create a plan for optimization. So understand what those key parameters are for success, and what your decision-making process might be based on those performance metrics. Okay, we've done a digital display campaign. It performed at a benchmark, but we're about to invest some more budget into it. We need to make it better. Can we change the creative? Can we change the targeting? How do we optimize it? And always keeping that kind of end audience or customer, consumer or fundraiser in mind when you're optimizing is key. Because if we always have that customer or fundraiser centric approach in our minds, then it really helps us optimize, because we can figure out who these kind of people are, or organizations, what they want, where they're likely to be, and the kind of messages that might resonate with them. So setting our KPIs. So we need to start with our goal. What are we trying to do? Are we getting more email signups? Are we trying to get a bigger post reach on social media? Are we trying to increase our brand's foothold in a certain space or area, or with a certain demographic, such as businesses? Objectives. So what levers are you going to use to kind of achieve that goal? They have to be, specific, measurable, achievable, relatable, and time bound. Sorry, I've got all of them down there. And our KPIs, how will you know that you've succeeded? You need to have some really important key performance indicators that tie back into those objectives. And then finally, once you've kind of done that, you need to understand your measurement approach, understand your reporting structure, your benchmarks, which, as I said, are free. There's a lot freely available online if you are conducting certain activities for the first time, and establish, those key actions and identify the owners for that, so that you know who's going to be reporting on the marketing, how often that's going to be. And also, if you're able to have a kind of round table, or everyone to get together once you've got that reporting back, so you can kind of talk about important next actions. And if you are going to optimize marketing, what that looks like in a timeline perspective. Is that for the next campaign in a month's time? Are you going to kind of pull the creative you've got in the market or online now and simply refresh it? There's lots of decisions that need to be made, but by using data to guide them, it makes these things a lot more strategic, and hopefully really helps us get those great commercial outcomes that we're looking for. Great. So I wanted to talk quickly about social media marketing and the landscape, purely because social media is, well, one of the kind of digital marketing concepts that pretty much everyone here in some way will interact with, whether it's our kind of classic social networks up here in the top left, or our messaging apps, or even pieces that don't even seem that much like social media, like our blogs, forums, or kind of consumer review networks. And we can go through all of these one by one, but I think why they're important is because all users, or a large proportion of them, will be using one of these channels at some stage during the day, pretty much every day. And also on top of that, a lot of them are free to kind of set up a profile on. So in terms of getting reach, starting to get people to understand and see your brand and pushing content out there, they're brilliant foundational blogs to start with before we invest any budget, because it doesn't cost anything to utilize a lot of these tools. So I think with our social networks, especially kind of Twitter and LinkedIn, those two obviously seem slightly more professional, but they help brands and people connect and share that information, those ideas, content posts. You can grow your user base organically, and they're definitely a must-have. Every kind of organization that you interact with, I think as a baseline, you'd expect probably to have a Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn profile, no matter what they are. And sometimes in my head, it raises question marks if they don't. So I think onto that, media and content sharing networks. So as I've seen in lots of different use cases across the third sector, there's some really brilliant emotive stories and content that can come out of all the good impact and purpose that you do drive, and finding the right network to share that content, whether that's visual content that we can put on Instagram, or it can be a short form documentary put on YouTube. You can put mood boards on Pinterest. You can get filters on Snapchat. There are no limits to what can be done. The only limit is your own creativity and time and resource and budget, for obvious reasons. But blogs and forums. Do we think this is where some of the people that we support are going to be, where our fundraisers might be? Can we get some of our stories out there onto kind of sites like WordPress and publish some of the things we're doing, talk about events or campaigns that we've got upcoming, and get people to really kind of come onto your brand's journey and really understand what it is that you do and how you differentiate from those around you. Messaging and chat apps, a lot of times, and I know for mental health providers, a lot of times these can be used to help support people, but also from a marketing perspective, there are also now ways that we can utilize them for conversational interaction, kind of status updates, and to kind of send people updates across the board on the work that your organization is doing, especially replacing things like SMS, which we know less and less people are using at the moment with the proliferation of tools like WhatsApp. Consumer review networks. So, if you have a page on Google, there will be a way of you having kind of online reviews in Google as well. I think obviously Trustpilot and TripAdvisor and Yelp may be less necessary for this session, but always good to know and understand that any kind of reviews that we get from any interactions with customers will always kind of sit on Google. So understanding and managing them is always going to be important when we get those through. And then things like interest-based networks, how can we help connect with others with a shared interest or hobby? Can we use those for targeted marketing? Can we find places where we've got that our dream kind of target audience? Are they in any of these interest-based networks? Are there networks purely for people that are fundraising for causes, for businesses that have CSR programs? There are always interesting pockets across the web, wherever you look, no matter what your interest is or how niche it is, or the topic you're looking for. There's usually going to be someone that's already set up a Reddit page or some kind of interest-based network around it, which is brilliant. Whether you are looking for people that are doing fundraising, or you're a left-handed dog walker who lives in Ealing and you want to join the Left-Handed Dog Walkers Association of Ealing, it really is kind of bonkers what is out there. So definitely try and utilize all these kind of different social media tools, more than just our social networks, to kind of define who it is we're speaking to, and find those spaces where we can publish our content, be it visual or long form, and find those interest-based networks that perhaps we can target some of our great messaging towards. Excellent. So just some use cases on social media and social media marketing more than anything. So absolutely foundational on all of this is management of our own pages and drafting and publishing our kind of content. So you would be surprised at the amount of big organizations that don't do this well. Ones with quite embedded teams. I work for a FTSE 100 company that I won't name, but we had a homepage and most of the content on there was years old, which as it wasn't, it just seems bonkers. But you need to draft and publish organic content to your own pages. Perhaps you do this strategically at key campaign months, like in the run up to Christmas, if that's a key time for you, or perhaps you want to kind of publish or content once every month. It depends about the stories and narratives that you want to be telling, and also kind of the wider organizational announcements that you want to communicate to these users as well. You need to define and manage your content strategy, and perhaps, as with a lot of things in marketing, having a really robust calendar with all those kind of themes and content pieces mapped into it is going to be really beneficial. And also manage content approvals so that if we are putting anything on the website, it's gone through the right kind of the right set of people before we push anything live, because we know things like SEO and keywords are so important now. And also, if anything wasn't right, if there's a spelling mistake, it's quite hard to rectify once it's gone live. So it's always good to push past the right stakeholders. Generating insights. So, can we capture social conversations? What are people talking about when they mention our brand on social media? What are our competitors, or well, not competitors, our peers doing? How can we see the good work they're doing and stay informed of their kind of engagement? Is there anything we can learn from their content and campaigns? For instance, I'm just noting anecdotally, but Cancer Research UK noticed that their kind of social media usage was flagging a bit, especially on Instagram. So one thing they've done quite a lot often is they've used a lot of polls. So when people see their Instagram stories, they vote on them, and by doing that organically, and people interacting with them as a brand, it actually kind of boosts their engagement figures, and therefore means that their Instagram posts are shown to more people. So it's kind of small, intuitive changes we can make in the digital marketing landscape that will help pull those growth levers and hopefully together have a really good effect on all those kind of key KPIs. So generate insights, understand our target audience demographics. If we're posting on LinkedIn, our target audience might be different to if we're posting on Facebook or Twitter or sending an email. So it's understanding what each of those audience wants and the sentiment behind your messaging and channel preferences tailored to that as well. So nurturing community and reputation. So a lot of the organizations that I'm speaking to right now will have their own kind of community in mind, of both businesses, fundraisers, and also the people that they help and impact each and every day. So understanding that how they can kind of speak to all of those different demographics on social and email and all those other kind of digital platforms is key. And then finding and nurturing kind of brand advocates or influencers, which I know can be seen as a dirty term, but at the end of the day, anyone that can kind of credibly promote your brand to an extended audience. That I've seen a lot of influencers, I think in Northern Ireland, support a charity called Pieta House, which is a mental health charity. I'm sure some of you will know, but these influencers have audiences of hundreds of thousands of people, and they will openly promote all of the services that the Pieta offers to their wider user base, which gives a really nice uplift of people that perhaps haven't seen the brand before. And the understanding obviously is, because it's such a good cause, is that kind of activity is pro bono. So there's also, nice mutually beneficial ways we can speak to new audiences and leverage some of these newer kind of marketing tactics on social. And also identify and manage potential crises. I don't think that's going to be as important here, but as always, things do go wrong. So it's always good to understand and keep an eye on our marketing results, just so if anything does happen, we react to that really quickly. And I guess finally, engage with our service users. If people ask us questions, be that on social, be that on Google reviews, can we reply to them? Can we be part of the conversations? Can we react with the right kind of content? And can we use that to kind of inform our marketing strategy? As I've said, marketing isn't a one-way street. We need to understand what our users are saying and kind of utilize all of our reporting to make sure that the marketing we're sending next year is even better and more impactful than the marketing we're sending this month. And storytelling. So as I've said, everything is branding, but having a really nice, consistent story that underpins what your organization does, perhaps how it drives impact, and the purpose that kind of drives everything you do is so important, and really kind of from an engagement perspective, important in keeping that kind of emotive emotive centric journey going. Cool.
Hi, Luke. Hayley here. We've received a question through the chat, so I won't go into the question just yet. I'll just give you a nudge to the time and say that we've got the one building and ready for you. So I'll leave you to manage the last few minutes and make sure you've time to come to Carol's interesting question in just a moment that we'll share with everyone.
Excellent. In which case we can whip through this, because I believe, Hayley, we're sending the slides around afterwards, aren't we? So yeah, just what does good look like? So I think a really good strategy probably includes lots of different pillars. We've got emotional content. We need to have a consistent approach in terms of our brand identity and our tone of voice across all those different kind of points and all the different touch points they might see. Regular and well-timed posts. Let's try and keep people engaged by sending marketing quite often, be that on social media or on our website. Two-way engagement. We need to be listening on social media to understand what users like. Perhaps they're interacting to posts that have photos on. Can we upload more of those kind of media-driven posts? Optimize. So we need to A/B test, understand which of those channels is working best for us, and also personalization. So using kind of those social insights to know who our demographic are, especially if we're putting any funding behind a social media campaign, we're going to personalize. Understanding that target audience is really important. And then a strategic use of channels. So not all channels are going to be relevant to your brand. The size, demographic and location and impact that you're trying to have probably will drive what your use of channels is. Not everyone's going to have the same channel mix, because not everyone's going to be trying to come through to the same outcomes, especially those I'm speaking to on the call. Mindful that we have a few questions. We're probably getting a bit closer in terms of time. Email marketing is probably one of our most important digital channels that we're using, mainly for user acquisition, but I do think that we can always look to do more with retention on email marketing, because when we have people's all important opt-ins, we need to kind of remarket to them, remind them of the impact we make, and hopefully re-engage them in future. But we'll send over these slides and you can let me know if any further questions on that, as I'd like to leave some time for some questions.
Thanks so much, Luke. That was really, really useful, and really thank you for tailoring that to the audience. I know that it's really important for everybody listening that the message feels like it's really pertinent to them, and that was just so good. Thank you. So we do have one question that's come in from Carol. Carol is from CAS Plus, so she's based in Cornwall and Devon, and she works in the criminal justice system.
Great.
And Carol's question is, they're interested in progressing a marketing and fundraising role for the charity. They're also a volunteer-led organisation and interested in developing these volunteer roles as a specialism. Do you have a comment on using local students on marketing, journalist, media courses to offer work-based practical experience pitched alongside their studies?
Absolutely, and great question, Carol. So I've actually been working the last couple of months with a social enterprise based in Belfast who had that exact same kind of mindset and questioning. And I guess just to answer your point, and there are always going to be considerations around budget, resource, and impact. But if we can set up, mutually beneficial schemes where that we've got people that perhaps really want to kind of learn some foundational marketing and put their skills to the test. Perhaps they are students or people in proximity to you. Then absolutely that's something we should be doing, as long as there's a clear value exchange. You're getting something out of it, they're getting something out of it, and for them a lot of the time it will be just to kind of put that into practice. I actually personally started my marketing career by volunteering in the third sector. So, that's absolutely something we should be doing. I know there's always going to be questions around resourcing, funding, and of course a lot of the fundraising we raise we'll want to put towards impact and purpose for those really obvious reasons that we all know and we've drawn out. So yeah, utilizing resource that could be students or younger people that perhaps want a little bit of initial experience is definitely something that I think is a good idea in terms of tactics, especially since a lot of them in their lectures will be learning the best practice stuff that I'm sure I don't even know about yet. So they might come with some really interesting viewpoints or ideas, because they won't be kind of siloed into the group think that perhaps sometimes can happen when everyone's sat together thinking about the same problems for a while. So they may come in with some really interesting and fresh viewpoints.
Thanks, Luke. I think that's such a good point. And also, I mean, just to add in my 2 pence there, Carol, I would say, especially when you're talking about social media marketing, this is really that generation's bread and butter. And so often I think there's huge value in using that younger audience to fill that skill set that otherwise, won't be so easily filled by somebody you're employing on a full-time basis. So yeah, thanks, Luke. That's really, really helpful. If anyone has any other questions, now is the time to ask, because we've got 2 more minutes until we finish. Otherwise, I think we can probably take as read that Landed asked most of people's questions. We will, of course, follow up with a feedback form as we did last time. So if you guys could fill that in, it really just helps us to make sure that we're tailoring the right things for you, messaging it in the right way. So any feedback that you have at all is super useful for all of us.
Also, just for me to signpost, if anyone has any questions that come to them just after this call ends, as always, I don't want to burden anyone too much, but please feel free to kind of get them over to me via Caitlin or Haley or whoever it is, and I'm more than happy to kind of send some assets over or go into that in a bit more detail.
Thank you so much, Luke.
No worries.
All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, everyone, I think we'll let Luke go and get back to his, I'm sure, very busy day. Maybe get outside in that sunshine. If you haven't been outside today, everyone, do. It's very nice out there. I went out for my lunch break and it was delightful. So yeah, Luke, thank you so much. That was really helpful.
I hope you all have a brilliant day, and thank you for your time. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.